Okay, I'm gonna further help my partner here with three main points. That the first one is that there's no promise that stem cells research will work with embryonic stem cells. Contrary to the impressions of our advocates of embryonic stem cell research, the potential of such cells remains entirely speculative, because embryonic stem cells research have never been successfully used in clinical applications with human patients. The whole point here is that it's never been used with humans, and this is because there's kind of like a moral thing for scientists. There's something called the Nuremberg Code. During World War II, well, the Germans did a lot of human testing on people, and the Nuremberg Code says was made after the World War II, and there's 2 points. Well, there's 10 different points to it. The first one of them is that there has to be voluntary consent for the human subject to be used. So when you think of that, they're using embryos, and there's no point of them to. There's no way for them to get their consent since they're not still alive. They cannot talk to people. The fifth point and the main point to it is that no experiment should be conducted where there is a priori reason to believe that death or disabling injury will occur, except perhaps in those experiments where the experimental physicians are also subjects. So this code, which a lot of countries have it as a law, some states here in the U.S. do have it, and it's just something that's given to scientists. It's not right for scientists to perform tests on human beings if they know that it's going to cause them death or make them crippled. By implementing these guidelines, the federal government would encourage researchers to conduct destructive embryo experiments that are punishable as felonies in some states. Like you may have heard on the abortion debate, some states or some people, if you kill someone pregnant, they charge you as 2 counts of murder instead of just 1. So it'd be illegal to just abort the embryos just for research. So are we willing to set a precedent that the promise with no proof of future medical treatments for third-party patients is sufficient to endorse the destruction of a living human being? So I'm going to give you a couple examples of different experiments that they've tried actually on rats and stuff with embryonic stem cells. In some patients, the implanted embryonic cells apparently grew too well, churning out so much of a chemical that controls movement that they jerked uncontrollably. So in some countries where they actually done that, people have not had a good reaction to the embryonic cells. They have with this patient, it would make that cell, but it will also reproduce into other different cells around it, that it will turn out more cells than it was supposed to. And also there's new research in the UK on rats that indicates that the transport of adult stem cells can help stroke victims regain movement, senses, and understanding. They also showed that the adult cells were more effective than cells aborted from babies. So this goes into the topic of adult cells, the other topic that my partner talked about. There are different alternatives to embryonic stem cells, but the main one is adult cells. These cells are taken from the actual people, and the main procedure, they reprogram the cells. In this procedure, researchers showed that they could wipe out a cell's developmental memory by inserting just 4 genes. Once returned to its pristine embryonic state, the cell could then be coaxed to become an altogether different type of cell. What they do is they take out the cells from the human, they insert these 4 genes, and it makes it go back in time in a way to an embryonic stage. They transform cells, grow, and divide in the laboratory. Unlike most adult cells, which don't survive in culture conditioning, the cells could then be induced to assume new identities, including those cell types most affected by diseases afflicting the patients who have donated the initial cells. That is one main part of an alternative, as well as adult cells. The new advances in adult stem cell research being reported almost weekly show more promise than destructive embryo research, and this should be better fund. People should fund more on that than embryonic stem cells. Talking about funds, taxpayer money will be used towards this. Like my partner said, money that a lot of people don't have already. Money that that if this does get passed, a lot of people wouldn't even afford to get such a treatment for themselves. There's already private companies are already doing experiments in this, so there is really no point on putting federal money into this when there's private companies. And from all these companies, only 2 of them are actually doing embryonic stem cells out of all the stem cells that there is. Only two companies have began to do embryonic stem cells in humans, but only Geron has received FDA approval. Another U.S. company plans to conduct trials involving stem cells taken from fetal tissue in Britain this year. So a lot of the private companies that are actually doing research on this, they're not even using embryonic stem cells because they know it's not going to be as effective as the other types of alternatives.